Can you hear my ice maker?
Yeah. Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim the Freedom Bear O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. How are you, buddy?
Fantastic. Living the
Yeah,
dream.
living the dream.
Just loving
That's
that
great.
dad life. That's what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, the dad life is never without challenges, bro. So you're running a little bit late because your tiny terrorist is, ripping up your house. What do you do?
Oh, he just peed on my carpet is all.
Oh,
I'm potty training my toddler. So,
okay.
yeah, he just peed on my carpet a little bit.
Well,
He's
it's
busy playing with garbage trucks. He couldn't be bothered. It's fine. I
it's
understand. It's
yeah. It's with some kids it takes a little bit of time. Other ones get it really quick, but that's the way to go. You just let them run around naked, and when they misfire, you kind of just talk them into, you
yeah,
know,
you just gotta,
doing better the next time.
gotta be patient and positive. That's what I hear.
Yep.
Oh, buddy, yeah, we shouldn't do that. We gotta go in the potty.
Yep. And try so hard not to get mad at them. If you get mad at them though, they potty train a lot quicker. I mean, I'm just,
Yeah, try not to yell. I'm
yeah,
stern but not mean. That's the
sure,
goal.
sure. It's true. Like it is. It's a real challenge raising, especially little kids. It's a real challenge.
It's all right. Make it. He's gonna get through it.
Yeah. The
Me
rewards,
and the boy and my wife. We're all gonna survive.
yeah. Look a little pee on the carpets. You got a dog. Every once in a while, she's sneaking one off somewhere. You know what I mean?
Probably.
Just the way it goes.
Yeah. No big deal. All right. Anyway, we gotta talk about some issues of national consequence.
Absolutely.
The SCOTUS stuff.
Yeah.
Supreme Court of the United States.
Yeah.
We'll
It's
talk
got
a
to be
bit
talked
about
about.
that.
It needs our perspective, our unique libertarian pragmatic perspective for people to make sense of it all, Kevin. We're here for
Absolutely. There's a lot of strange opinions on both sides, misinformed opinions on
that. Yeah,
the partisan, especially the partisan left. Man, the partisan left is like just
they've lost their freaking mind. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
mad about these, and they're also very wrong about a lot of them. They're just like not at all like correct in how they're assessing this stuff. So we're going to talk about some of that.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll get to talking about California a bit, and we'll do some fun stuff.
All right.
See what we get to. But we're going to go in 10 seconds. And of course, you listeners, if you want to weigh in, leave your comments. Go on, start 5.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Bear O'Connor.
I am here, Kevin. I'm glad to be here. And it's been a somewhat of a tumultuous week as far as news goes. An interesting week. We've got the whole world saying the Supreme Court is simply just politicized, and now they have the whole, I think we start with the affirmative action stuff, right? Like that kind of sent people into a tizzy.
Yeah, this is what we're going to talk about today, folks. We're going to talk about the affirmative action stuff. We're going to talk about the student loan thing. We're going to talk about the, what's the other one? The 303 creative, the web design folks.
Yeah.
And of course, hope everyone had a nice 4th of July too. Celebrated Independence Day this week.
I live on a lake, and I think we have like firework wars, right? Like somebody's always got to spend more money, and so it's an absolute blast. We just go out onto the lake and we sit in the boat and we sip on a beer, and it's really an incredible time. It feels very American, very unique to my existence, and it's like a blessing, It's just so enjoyable.
That sounds like fun. I think my neighbors were also having firework wars, but in the city of Rochester. There's some big ones. The guy across the street was lighting off, and I was like, "Oh man, shaking my windows, bro."
Oh,
It's
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Like it's fun to watch sometimes. It's part of the fun of living in the city is that no one cares. And people do care. The police don't do anything about it. Let me
Yeah,
be
so
clear.
no,
That's what
yeah,
it is.
that's an interesting point, right? Like certain things that happen in upstate New York that are illegal in the city, like the city when I've been there feels somewhat less oppressive, kind of, because it feels like there's less cops per person kind of issue going on, and so there's lots of things that people in densely populated urban areas are just saying, well, I don't care if this is illegal. Where sometimes around here we kind of get in trouble a little quicker, I think.
Oh, sure. I mean, like my friends and I used to light off fireworks, and when I lived in Oriskany, New York, or just outside of it too. And if you're the only one within 5 miles doing it, people can see you.
Yeah.
And like the times we lit off one of the Saturn missiles, didn't realize there's like 50 things, and there's a thing that's going to go on for like 10 minutes, and then we see the police car drive by. We're like, oh no,
Whoops.
yeah,
Yeah.
oops.
Back when
But
tannerite was illegal or was legal, we used to set that off all the time. And I
Tannerite.
think it's still legal, but now it's kind of more controlled. But
Yeah,
so
a little
nobody
bit,
could really
but
do anything. But when you
no,
set up
usually,
10 pounds of tannerite, it people know all over the
yeah,
whole town.
the whole county. They
Yeah, pretty much close to the whole county. Like it makes a pretty good noise.
But anyway, hope folks had fun, had a good time with their 4th, celebrated the nation's founding. Thought about the Declaration of Independence and fighting for freedom. Always good things to think about. But we're talking about Supreme Court stuff because that's what's in the news. That's topical. We're gonna, as you said, let's jump into the. You said you want to do the affirmative action stuff.
Yeah, let's get that
First,
one out of the
right?
way. That seems to be the most contentious. In a way, like pragmatically, in a way, I understand the argument that we have some boosting of systemic people that have been systemically discriminated against forever. But when I look at the structures that I see in many densely populated urban areas, I still see, I guess is where I lose my mind because I still see systemic racist structures in cities that include but are not limited to things like zoning, things like Section 8 housing, things that are not on a in my opinion, right, that they're not necessarily a net positive. Okay, so to make up for the systemic racism that we forced on people, we came up with a systemic racist policy. So it's like fighting racism with racism. And so, Kevin, walk me back off this ledge. Tell me I'm crazy that I should be more sensitive to the needs of everyone, or don't.
No, I'm not gonna walk you back. Right? Like it's so in relation to how affirmative action works in this case. Let's kind of like lay out like what it is, right? Like with some institutions like Harvard, they can use race as one of the factors in determining what their admissions criteria are, right? They can say, we want to achieve a certain level of diversity, so we will give, extra weight to some types of students while not giving that to others, right? So that might be African Americans get more preference compared to Americans of European descent or American, or it don't even have to be Americans, right? Like either any of those, right? I said African
Right.
Americans. I mean black in this case, actually, because immigrants who aren't Americans also can get that weight sometimes too. From any background, Europeans, Asians, whoever. And the group of students the group that was making the case here was saying that this is discriminatory, that everything else in our legal system says that you can't discriminate based on race. This is an outlier, and there's actual discrimination, actual harm happening. And in the case of like Harvard specifically, pretty demonstrable harm to Asian students, like specifically like the Asian students who were in like the top decile, so top 10% of like students who applied to Harvard were less likely to get in than black students who were in like the 40th decile, so like only in the top 40% of students. So you were more likely to get in as a black student in the 40th decile than an Asian student in the top 10%. So that's pretty surprising. That's pretty stark. And there's discrimination. People keep making this about a black-white thing, but like a lot of this the argument ended up actually hinging on like the Asian student thing, right? And
You're
so
right. That's the argument this time. Now, this just for everyone, this was legislated back in the 70s, where a white student kind of tried to make the same argument, and that guy lost. Like they affirmed the reality that affirmative action
yeah,
and
and it,
preferential admission to college was fine.
and they did it back in 2002 too, and in one of the opinions, Sandra Day O'Connor said that like, well, maybe we need this for another 25 more years, right? And it's almost up. It's almost 25 years since that last opinion in 2002. So you know, it's something that has been going on for a while. And the thing to think about this stuff too is is it just? Is it fair? Does it fit in with like a system in which we ought to treat people equally regardless of race? And does it work? And then the third part is should private institutions like Harvard be compelled to go by those rules, right? Because they are a private institution. They could, in theory, set their own rules, and they probably will find a workaround to this. UNC is a little bit different, University of North Carolina, because they are a public institution. So they're a little bit more bound by kind of federal rules and restrictions around the Civil Rights Act and around the 14th Amendment and everything else.
Yeah.
So public institutions a bit different. Harvard, basically they got lumped into this because they receive federal funding. So
Right.
that's with federal funding comes compliance with things.
Yeah, they get federal funding. They get student loans. You know, kids take out loans to go to Harvard. So they are a consumer of public services, and that's a reality, guys. The other thing is too, like, and maybe now isn't the right time to do it, but I always want to just challenge this notion, like Harvard in and of itself is just a brand, guys. It's like Bud Light, okay? It's built a bond over decades with the culture of America, where we pretend that the very best of the best come out of Harvard. But what actually happens, in addition to affirmative action, guys, is they have this entire policy of legacy admissions. Like just because your dad or mommy went there, you get to go there. And it's like, you could be a moron. You could be Hunter Biden. Like, you could be anybody and end up in Harvard just because your mom or dad successfully graduated from there. And to me, screw that brand, to be perfectly honest with you. I'll go one step further. David Hogg just graduated from Harvard. The criteria for his admission was that he was a successful social media commentator and a political activist. And that's why they let him in, not because of his grades. He wasn't.
They're building up the brand. He has a story, right?
Right.
Like, everything's about being able to tell your story effectively, right? Like, marketing's everywhere. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And that is totally why I got it. Like, I'm sure his grades are like fine, but like,
they were,
you know, is he like Harvard like kind of bills itself as being like the elite of the elite? You know, this is supposed to be the top 0.1% of students. Like, it's supposed to be that, but honestly, it's also about them being able to tell the story about getting students like him in who have a compelling narrative that fits into their brand, right? Like, it's not always about being the elite of the elite. And then what's also, people have pointed out correctly that a lot of colleges, like, this isn't really a thing, right? Like that, like the weighted admission standards and all this, it really is only like the top tier, like elite schools. Like most schools, they'll kind of accept whatever students want to go, right? Like it's usually the opposite problem for most schools. So like, it's not really a thing at, you know, frankly, the school I went to too, which was a fine school. It was a decent place. But usually the factor is how many people can we get in, not like, oh, we got to turn away people and we can only accept like people who meet our narrative or our diversity quotas or whatever, right?
Sure. I went to the poor man's Ivy League school right here in New York. Like, it was all about quality, performance, and competition among students. Harvard is a brand for rich people. That's it. I just, you know, I'm not impressed with Harvard. I never have been. Like, maybe it's because I grew up a poor kid with a little bit of angst towards like these societal structures that we worship. And so Harvard, whatever, man. You're still gonna suck.
You're like, whatever. It doesn't even matter anyway. No, I think it does matter. I mentioned this at the end of last show. You're gonna have to read that book I was talking about, Death of Expertise by Tom Nichols, where he talks about how much better like schools like that are and how it really does matter. Like you're gonna read that part, and like even I was mad, and I'm not like really anti-elite in the same way that you are, and even I was like, nah, that's dumb.
Yeah.
Like you're not smarter just because you went to Harvard. There are a bunch of morons who graduate from there too, and a bunch of like incredibly intelligent, impactful people who go to like community college and then a state school for 2 years. Like,
I mean, I'm so anti-authoritarian that somebody says I'm from Harvard, I say I don't care. I literally don't care. Like, I don't care that you graduated from Harvard. What have you done for me lately? That's it. That's
what it is. I mean, yeah, and if I'm ever hiring people too, it's the same thing. Like, okay, cool, you graduated from an elite school. Wow, all right, like. But what have you done with it, right? Like if they've done great things, cool, right? Like that, then obviously that was something that helped you. But it doesn't matter if you went to a really nice school and people will try to tell me that, oh, I went to this great school. Okay, but like, have you worked on any projects relevant to the thing I'm hiring you for? No? Oh, okay. Like
I'm going to be able to tell people I'm from Harvard, and that's going to help you. You know, like I graduated from Harvard, and that's like, sure, society buys into branding, and that's fine. I get it, but also, I'm all about tearing down the power structures and like, look, I don't hate the elite, I don't hate rich people, I don't care, but like the I'm from Harvard kind of deal, like that's a problem for me. You know, like it's just like your school. It's like this connected institution to all of the like public things. The lawyers that come out of Harvard get very good jobs. It's just this. Like,
it's connections, right? Like that's why you go. Part of why you go to some of these schools, because then you have connections to alumni networks who are in these high power law firms, political structures, whatever, right? Like going to school is about connections almost as much as the education you get there. Like that's what it is. And the sooner students learn that, the better, right? Because you use the networks that you have. That is part of the value in theory of going to college. It isn't just getting an education and learning. It's how do you leverage the network that school gives you to find your first job or your second job or whatever.
That is. And that's I guess that's probably the thing I hate the most about Harvard, right? That it's a networking. Thank you, Torrance Kingman.
Yeah,
it's a networking opportunity that we don't get part of it. And like, look, legacy admissions says it all, right? Like, here you go, come on in. You can be a C student and go to Harvard because your mom or your daddy went. So okay, great. Your brand sucks. All right. Like Harvard, I hate to be the guy that says it, but your brand sucks.
Well, you could do that if your parents are donors. They don't say that, but like, they'll
find a reason to accept you if they want to accept you. I would like if they ended legacy admissions and really said, all right, we're only taking the best students in the world, then all of this would make sense. But so one of the things you pointed out is that and I don't know how much information you have readily handed, but a lot of people are making comments that are just kind of bizarrely wrong about what this situation was. And they kind of fall back on a structural racism argument.
Right.
They fall back on the argument of fighting racism with racism. You got any tweets or anything at hand, or?
Do I?
Yeah.
No. I don't. I mean, I was going to talk about the dissenting opinion and the fighting racism with racism thing. Like I think that was part of the like majority opinion too. Something John Robertson said at least at some point in time, and that's that's definitely a thing to consider in this situation. Is that like, okay, if we really want to move towards a law that respects equality, like a system of law that respects equality before the law, then like we need to do it. We need to do it in practice. And in the dissent, Kendaji Jackson Brown basically says, well, look at all the systematic racism we have, and writes like this long thing about like systematic racism in this country. She's not wrong about that, but then says, and we need this for reasons, right? And then gets like a little bit vague on that, which is strange for a Supreme Court justice to do, who normally kind of puts these things in the context of like what is constitutional or not, right? And
isn't that their job? Like, what is constitutional or not is their job.
What is actually like legal here? What does the law say here? They're supposed to be the ones who interpret the law and apply it to different situations. That's in theory what they're supposed to do, right? And she kind of made a I think like an activist, like legislator from the bench, like, well, we want this because it's right, not because like it is consistent with the other aspects of the law that we have to consider, which is a different thing. Like if you want to do that, you want to do policy advocacy, Congress could do things like that. They could change the law to be able to explicitly accommodate this stuff, but they won't do it because it's unpopular. People don't like it. Like affirmative action is unpopular. People don't like discrimination based on race in any situation. Like even even in situations where like you want to help, and if you made something class based or something like that, like it might get more support, which is what a lot of places have moved towards. Is they say, okay, like we want a certain number of low income people to be able to participate in our school environment and bring new perspectives and get an opportunity to succeed where they might not have out in networks that they don't have.
Right.
Great. Okay. Like I get that.
That appeals to the humanitarian in me for sure. I want to be honest with you. Like there are arguments that I've seen that appeal to me about the notion of giving people chances that they wouldn't otherwise have, and the one that appeals to me the most is like, look, a lot of Black kids from urban areas go to really, really bad public schools. So we don't really know how well they would do if they went to a decent public school. And it's like, well, give them school choice, because
right.
They're already being
fix the problem then, right?
Yeah.
Don't fix it like in the college process. Fix it at like the elementary and high school, middle school levels. Like that's where we need to fix these problems. And then again, not for nothing too, but just because you're Black, that doesn't say anything about your family's like upbringing and like what your situation was. You can be wealthy and well connected and still have Black skin too. Like it is a thing. And I'm not going to get the whole like is white privilege real thing, but like there are people who come from very privileged positions who get into like meet these requirements but aren't necessarily like disadvantaged in any way throughout their life. Like that's just what it is. Like race is not an essential characteristic of like any individual, and people come from a whole bunch of situations regardless of skin color. And we're running out of time to talk about it, but the Justice Thomas's like dissent or concurrence rather talks about that a bit. Because he's very much an advocate of moving towards like a more colorblind society. Even someone described it as like a race abolitionism. Like we should not consider this because it's such a flawed characteristic. It's such a flawed way of like trying to separate people as to be fundamentally harmful in the classifications that we put people in. So anyway, we are out of time for this segment. We're going to talk about some of the other stuff too, the 303 case, the student loan case, all those. We'll be back in just a few minutes here on WYSL. Thanks again for joining us on A Free Solution. Talk to you soon. All right. And during the break, we'll get to some of these comments too.
There was a lot. It was fire. The comments were coming out crazy.
Yeah. Being fired. Torrance says you don't fight fire with fire, you fight racism with solidarity.
Thanks, Torrance. I like that. That's appropriate. Look, I'm a old bald white guy, man, that says like one race, that race is a social construct, that they've been playing identity politics for decades, that if we really wanted solutions, we'd be like, everybody would go, one race, the human race. Let's fix this stuff, and let's fix it with freedom and respect for and dignity and all of those things. Like even gun control, man, like that is such a racist policy. And it's like tighter in densely populated urban areas. Like gun control is tighter. Like legit citizens who have the right to defend themselves are denied that right under threat of being thrown in a cage. And that's nonsense. Like that's literally crazy.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's definitely a thing. And people have a right to defend themselves. And, like it's actually somewhat unrelated. I'm going to get back to the point, but like one of this big transportation survey just came out in Rochester. He said like one of the biggest issues of people walking, riding their bike, and taking the bus is that they're afraid of crime. And specifically, that's a big issue in like low income neighborhoods that are heavily Puerto Rican or heavily Black. And so they're really concerned about crime, but there's a lot of crackdown on people who are, carrying a weapon. And some of those folks are bad. I get it. Some of those folks are up to no good, but other people are just like, they're worried, they're scared, they're trying to protect themselves. They know that the bad guys have guns, and they want a way to be able to defend themselves if the situation arises. And, I get it. And a lot of folks just find it incredibly difficult under New York State's regime to be able to defend themselves in those situations. And I know it was a survey about transportation in Rochester, but it comes back to this issue and how we structure laws. And that's why I think we should move away towards like race as a classification, but it's so ingrained in our society as like a way of like trying to measure like what disparate outcomes exist because of like a historical legacy of doing that we still have to say, we'll check back in, like, is this still working? Like, are we making any progress? And the answer is like, yes, actually, despite what the left says, that like incomes between like Black Americans and white Americans have like almost come together on average.
Well, that's good.
Wealth hasn't yet, but like annual incomes have, and but that's a good thing. That is a sign of progress.
That is a sign of progress. And besides, the government is stealing wealth for itself. So like the chances of the wealth gap, any kind of in any way, shape, or form closing is based on government's behavior right now. It's getting less and less likely. Like we're going to devalue our way out of the Social Security crisis, the impending thing. Like this pattern of devaluation is going to continue, and so wealth is going to be hard to accumulate, kids.
Yeah, it is. It's gonna be tough. And then one more fun comment before we go. Tim, is Kevin drinking the blue Kool-Aid?
I don't. Like, look, when it comes to vaccine discussions, all you guys think Kevin drinks the blue Kool-Aid, but like Kevin is legit libertarian for real. Like I get it. Like I get it, but also
it's Gatorade, not
Kevin
Kool-Aid.
does not drink
Cool Blue.
Kool-Aid.
Cool Blue is the best kind, or
Kevin
not
is
cool.
healthy
Frost.
machine.
Sorry, Frost, not Cool Blue.
There you go. I'm drinking beer as usual.
I drank all my beer 4th of July weekend.
Honestly, like I hurt myself yesterday, but it was such a blast. I had a bunch of people over, got the boat out all day. We tried like wakeboarding. It was a blast. But just we had so much fun.
Yeah. All right. We should probably get back. We should get back to the actual show though.
We're having a little like, guys. We'll show as many comments.
Show the other announcement.
I promise. Oh wait, is there a more racist institution than the federal government? There is not, because it's
John on YouTube.
Yeah.
There probably is, but a more impactful one.
Arguably, and I don't know, maybe we should save this for the show, but there's been a conflation of the definition of racism, right? And I don't. It could take up a few minutes to kind of go through it, but at one point we were able to separate in society the notion of someone is a bigoted jerk, and that's a racist construct that's disgusting. And so who really has the power to be racist is, like, honestly, the government, some big businesses. You other guys, like the racists that everybody calls racist, are simply mostly just bigots,
Right.
And bigotry is based in stupidity, hostility. And honestly, like I can't even, there's words I want to use because I don't like bigotry. I hate it. It offends me to my core. So anyway, I won't use them, Kevin.
No, right. I mean, that is the thing. Like I think there is, among certain anti-racist activists, like in terms of the definition of racism, right? Like who can be racist? What does that entail? Is like denying your privilege racist is, not outright discrimination, just denying that you live a privileged life because of a characteristic you can't change. Is that racist? Is it racist if a person who is not white discriminates against someone based on race? And I've heard sincerely from people that no, it's not. Like if a Black person decides not to hire someone of another race, that isn't racist because they don't have the power element necessary for racism to be present.
Even though the power element is they're hiring someone from a different race.
Right. Which to me, like that's what I said. But societally, they don't have power, and I'm like, no, I can't get behind that one. Like I understand what they're saying, and I
sure.
But at the same time, like you have power in that particular situation, even if you feel you have less power in it, like society wide. And if you're using that power to discriminate against someone based solely on race and nothing else, kind of feels like that meets the definition of racism to me.
Sure, especially if there's a ability to impact their life with your decision making. That would be racist.
Yeah, but anyway, we should get back to the show.
All right.
Should get back to the show, and I have a good segue comment for talking about the student loan case.
All right, perfect.
We're gonna do that. So we're gonna go back in 10. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
Still here, Kevin.
Yeah. So appreciate all you joining us here on WSL and all of you joining us on the live stream too. We are talking about the SCOTUS cases, the Supreme Court of the United States cases. Specifically, we talked about the affirmative action one in the first segment. We're going to talk about a couple of the others now too. And we have a good transition comment from earlier in there when we were talking about whoever that most other schools just kind of accept whoever, and this Facebook user says most accept whoever's got those subsidized loans.
Correct.
That is kind of how it is at a lot of schools. Like, okay, cool, let's get someone in, they got the loans, doesn't really matter if they don't really have the money for it or they're not set up for success, we're going to take the people with the loans. So of course Joe Biden decided to do something to help those poor students struggling under loans like me, and unilaterally with an executive order use a post 9/11 law called the HEROES Act to kind of weasel his way into committing the U.S. to spend like $400 billion in student loan forgiveness.
Yeah. He's a beautiful person, Kevin. That's how compassionate he is. He will take taxpayer dollars and buy votes.
Yes.
With taxpayer money.
Conveniently did this before the midterm elections.
Just timing was excellent. Oh my God.
And he's going to have another one too.
Yeah.
We'll see how long that one takes it to make it to the Supreme Court. But so the Supreme Court decided to crush the dreams of those struggling upper middle class college students and
starving artists, Kevin. They went to basket weaving. They could be making baskets, but that they could be. So look, my commentary is going to go down this road of college has been, at some point, it became this notion that if you go to college, no matter what you go to college for, your life is going to be better. That was sold heavily in the teachers' unions, and the teachers' unions saw wisdom in supporting a system of long-term schooling.
And at one point in time, sort of true, as long as you finish college.
Right. You do have to finish college, but also it got to be to a point where college inflation outpaces real inflation by, I don't know, some astronomical expense. So we developed systems to support systems. And then we made people unable to default out of their student loans if they encourage financial hardship. So what that did, guys, we made a non-competitive environment, right? Colleges knew there was going to be this cash flow. They knew they had a system supporting them. They didn't really have to continue to increase offering value. They just increased their offerings. And that's a problem, okay?
Well,
that's a real problem.
That's what it is. I mean, for better or worse, a lot of students did get the opportunity to go to college. People like me, I don't know that my parents would have been able to help me with college. Maybe if we didn't have the massive inflation related to college expenses that we had, I'd be able to work my way through a little bit more effectively. But a lot of students need these loans to get in. So I get it. And I was one of them. But also there's a lot of incentive, as you talked about, we basically get this free money. We get it guaranteed no matter what. Doesn't matter if the students fail in 2 years or whatever, right? We're going to do this. So the incentive for most of these schools is to get as many students as possible, right? And to build.
They lie to do it. I got a story about that. Like
Well,
they're bad.
and they, and build amenities to do it, build new sports fields, right? Okay, well, we're gonna build a sports program. We're getting all these athletes to go here, and they're gonna stay here for 4, 5, 6 years. I mean, not really joking about that either. And
Yeah,
like
no,
that's
you're
what we're
not.
gonna do. We're gonna build new residence halls. We're gonna build like new fun things on campus, and it becomes less about the education and more about like 4 years of like living in a cool community, which again is fun. I was an RA. I had a ton of fun in college, but like maybe not the best thing for the way we do it on a society wide level.
No.
And so now you have this big problem with a lot of people do have a lot of student debt. I have a lot of student debt too. Like it's part of it.
Sure.
I'm in some ways glad I did. In other ways, like, would I do it again? Not necessarily. No, there's some ways it's a bad decision and not really necessary for the career path I went down. But
Sure. It's a little bit predatory, Kevin, the way they do some school admissions. A kid I know wanted to be a nurse, went to a local community college to get on into the nursing track, right? And she hadn't taken the requisite courses in high school that they required. So they said, look, we'll transfer you right into the nursing program. You just come here and take these things. And you got to get these courses, one semester of these courses out of the way, right? So she goes, she takes all those courses. She does very well. She guys, it's like she did everything. She drove to school every day. She did all the stuff she was supposed to do. And she's like, all right, I'm ready to start this stuff. And they're like, no, you still have to take another semester of these other classes. And she's like, what? Like, you promised me that I would be in the nursing program, transferred in, and now this is what you've done to me. And so now she has like $8,000 worth of student debt to pay for these classes that didn't get her into a nursing program. And now she went to a local community program, took nursing classes, and now is a nurse, like the level of nurse that she wanted to be. She wanted to be like an assistant in an office kind of nurse, not an RN that's working in hospitals. She was willing to kind of work her way towards that. And that's what she thought she was signing up for. And they basically made her think she was. And it just is awful. It was just awful for her. But she survived, persevered, and worked her butt off. But like, she can't default out of the loans that she took out now. And that's unfair because they misrepresented their product and they wanted bodies to take classes. It wasn't like the classes had anything to do with what she wanted to do. They were classes that she supposedly didn't do well enough or take in high school. And that is garbage, guys. That's garbage.
Yeah, and that's frustrating to hear someone got misled like that, because and expensive for someone, right? That could really derail someone's life.
Certainly it started her at a disadvantage anyway, like regardless. And she's a great kid and she's making great money now and she's doing what she wants to do. And I'm very happy for her. But it's a very real personal story where they basically misrepresented this to get a body in the seat, to get their money from her, and to get whatever other money they get from the government regarding this situation. It was just very unfortunate. And she's like, they were like saying, well, you didn't file the right paperwork anyway to get transferred into the program you want to get. Like, she's like, we're kind of like, who's supposed to help her file the right paperwork at the right time for this? You're her advisor, do your job, And so that's the thing, it's like, it looks very scamish, this system to me.
Yeah. Well, I want to get to this comment from John on YouTube. It says, schools have any responsibility to make students be successful. There would be true education. I've heard different variants of this. Like, people have pitched the idea like schools are at least somewhat on the hook if students aren't able to complete college or aren't able to make a certain income by a certain point. And that is how some loans could be structured, right? But basically you could take some types of loans, that where you have to pay back a certain amount of your income for 10 years afterwards instead of, the government loans that exist out there, or the other private loans that exist out there, which again, those can be really expensive. Right now, like the level of accountability is that schools publish their 6-year graduation rates. So what that means is, like, if we admitted a student as a freshman, how many of those graduated within 6 years, right? Which is now considered like a somewhat normal time frame for students to graduate with a bachelor, normally a 4-year degree, right? Because some students will take a break or go work for a while or whatever, right? So 6 years, they give them that. So if you see a school with a very low 6-year graduation rate, probably not a great place. That's definitely a red flag. Now, are most students and parents looking at that? No, they're looking at how good the food is, what the dorms are like,
Sure.
you
How
know,
close it is to home, so you can
how,
save some money, like
yeah, exactly.
those are the things that parents look at.
Yeah, no. So there's a lot to consider, but that's one of them. That's really like one of the few measures of accountability that exist. There's other ones like, like discount rate and scholarship rate basically. And you can find some schools will have some statistics on like the incomes and jobs that students get afterwards, but some of that can be a bit cherry picked if it's put out as marketing materials rather than stats. Good.
Yeah. Facebook user says, what about us poor kids who couldn't even get a student loan and had to work even while in high school? And what do we get, Uncle Joe? And I do think that that's an element of this, right? That people are saying, hey, I paid all my student loans under, threat or whatever. And I worked my way through college, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't get to fall back on this government loan system, and nobody gave me nothing. And so it's like,
again,
but
you still get to pay for it if this program ends up going through.
Yeah, it's still this thing where they're saying, hey, there's definitely a problem in the student loan system and how much college educations cost. It's our fault, but what we're going to do is steal from everybody to give it to the people that went to college. And don't worry, guys. As a response, we'll devalue the currency. Everything's going to be fine. It's just one more irresponsible governing process that ends in devaluing the currency, ends in people being irrationally angry. There's a movement going around, Kevin. Let me throw this at you. I'd be like, maybe if all these kids stopped paying their loan, what would happen?
That's a great question. Their credits are going to be ruined.
There will be.
You can't discharge that in bankruptcy. And the government can keep chugging along if they don't pay it. But Tim, I know at some point in time, we're going to talk about what the decision actually said, because we have not actually talked about what the decision said. At all.
Sorry. Let's do that.
So we should do, because I'm looking at the clock. We got just a few minutes left of this segment. And so what the decision actually said, because it's like we've talked about whether or not it's fair to some people, all that stuff, whether or not the student loan program has bad incentives, all that stuff. Not at all what this decision
Let's
said.
do what we're supposed to do. Get to the real news, Kevin. That's
all it actually said was that the president could not use this law from the post 9/11 Heroes Act to forgive student loans. That it was not what that law was meant for. It was not a power delegated to the executive branch that was specific to combat active combatants and veterans related to the war started after 9/11 and pausing student loans for those folks, not forgiving student loans en masse. So Congress said, okay, if y'all want to do this, Congress has to do it. Congress is not given the power of the executive to do this. They created this program. They got to give the power of them to do that. If you want to pass this law, Congress can do it, which is bonkers because everyone keeps being like, oh, I can't believe they took away this power and I can't believe that they did this. And you got Bernie Sanders being like, Joe Biden should try again. Like, bro, you're the one who has to do it. That's what it says. Joe Biden can't try again. He gave it his best shot. And his best shot was terrible, and we all knew it was terrible. We talked about it in this program. I talked about it on other programs. I got invited as a guest to talk about the student loan thing, and I'm like, no, it's unconstitutional. Full stop. It's going to get shot down. That's what's going to happen.
If we have any standards as a society, and it's great that you actually brought us back around to the facts, because to be perfectly honest, I had kind of lost track of what the ruling really said. It was in my mind, it was the social justice warrior fighting on one side to the other and how unfair it is to everybody. But yeah, all she really said was you can't use the Heroes Act to grasp at a executive power like this.
Doesn't pass the smell test.
Votes. That's how I would have framed it if I was a Supreme Court justice. You can't use the Heroes Act to buy votes from students, but they said it a little differently.
Yeah, that's... they framed it in nice legal constitutional language and whatnot. But yeah, the president can't twist a law that wasn't even remotely meant for this purpose to commit the country to spending $400 billion, which is essentially what it was, because we're going to wipe all this money off the books. No, Congress has to do that. Like, if Congress could still do it, they could pass a law to do this. They could do partial or full student loan forgiveness. They could make more aggressive like forgiveness programs for service. Like, they could do all sorts of stuff with this for people who are actually like struggling to pay back their student loans. Again, the problem is that like a lot of people aren't struggling to pay back their loans, A, and B, like Congress doesn't want to. In fact, they just voted recently, like a couple months ago recently, to restart the student loan program, right? So there's no political will to do this.
Right.
So they could do it, they just don't want to. But all the lefties, even those who like voted the fund the program, they're still going to fundraise off of this because like no one actually pays that close of attention. That's
all the Congress does is preserve issues to argue over and fundraise off of, like the abortion issue, the Roe versus Wade thing. All this stuff was issue preservation. Even the stuff we're fighting over about whether illegal aliens and immigrants should be, at what pace and rate they should be coming into the country. All of this stuff is Congress has abrogated its responsibility to come to rational legal agreements throughout the federal government. They've done it for years, man. It's gross. I hate it.
But yeah, no, for sure. But we have to head to a break though, Tim. Thanks again for joining us here on WSL for a free solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
All right, that was honestly, you bringing it home like that, bringing it back around. Like, I kind of had lost track of that in my own kind of brain, which my brain's usually pretty good about realizing what the real issue is, but that was the real issue.
The whole issue is constitutionalism, right? Like, it's like, okay, you could be bad. Like, you can even advocate like, we should forgive loans for X, Y, and Z reasons. Sure. But like, you just got to pass a law to do it. Like this, we can't have the executive just like making stuff up. Right. Like, like if we get President DeSantis and he's like his new like the anti-woke crusaders, and he's like, yep, the authorization of use of military force, that means that we can fund my school programs to prevent wokeness. Like, people are like, what? No, that's not what that's for. What are you talking about? And correctly, the Supreme Court would knock that down, right? Like, that was really, don't want executives just doing that.
Thank God, really, thank God we do have a system of checks and balances that does seem to work. Yeah, occasionally.
And also, he's the most likely candidate right now to try something like that too.
Yeah.
He does that stuff all the time. He's gotten so many things knocked down. But let's see.
Torrance must be a libertarian, solid libertarian.
Yeah.
And we could talk about DeSantis is an authoritarian in sheep's clothing. He's not even in sheep's clothing. He's an authoritarian.
That's what he is.
I love it. I love it.
And I was gonna just like briefly talk about this wonky issue that Shelley brought up on YouTube: deregulate endowments. And if endowment doesn't have enough money to fulfill its stated purpose, the fund should offset tuition. What endowments are like, they are so weirdly and strictly regulated. I served on a college board for a little bit, but there's a lot of restrictions on what you can use an endowment for. And a lot of times, like, they can't touch them. They can't use them for a lot of things. They can sometimes borrow against them for certain types of like emergencies or capital projects and things like that. But mostly they're there to like be a big investment fund. And then they can take some of the profit from that endowment to like support operations. Right. Mm-hmm. But you can't actually like pull out of it, right? And a lot of nonprofits work like this too. But like, people talk about the billions and billions that Harvard has in the endowment, but like legally they're not really allowed to like eat into that. It's just supposed to be something that they like have a fiduciary responsibility to keep and grow and not eat at the principal. They have to just like take the gains from that to like fund what they do.
Yeah, we have a local nonprofit which shall remain nameless for political reasons, but they've taken their endowment that they've developed over the years and are now going into, for-profit property management. And it's just like, I don't understand how you get away with that. I just don't. It doesn't make sense. We made them rich by letting them be a nonprofit, right? And allowing them to skirt certain federal requirements. And now they can take that money that they've made and use it to go into
You're
business.
you're allowed to do profitable activities as a nonprofit. It's just that like the owners can't walk away with the funds after. That's all that means, right?
Right.
So like you can have like a business that's basically a nonprofit. It's just that the owners, which is like the board, essentially whatever the governing body is, can't just be like, oh, we're gonna take a bunch of money from this and walk away and do whatever. No, it's got to be reinvested. So you can do that.
Non-competitive, they get into non-competitive markets, and they're
Yeah.
able to effectively control their competition because they're not taxed the same as a business that would be in that same sphere, right? So it seems a little bit
Right.
government
So you
friendly.
can do that, and then sometimes the executive salaries end up being a bit high. It's so
Yeah,
it's
sure.
a thing. But anyway, we should go back in a minute because we have still more to talk about. We've talked about student loans. We got to talk about the 303 creative case.
We do.
So talk about both of those things, or all these things, and then maybe we'll get to some of the fun stuff.
We've got, well, I'll drop some fun stuff before the end of the show. That's for sure.
Oh, good. So we're going to go back and these are great comments. I want to keep everyone too late. Maybe we'll get to some of those after the show too. So y'all rock. Thanks for staying active this show. Appreciate you.
Much appreciated. Absolutely.
All right. So we're going to go back in 10 seconds. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, yours today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and I guess there's no way around it. Like the Supreme Court news this week is going to dominate our show because they had yet another, I think, incredibly interesting ruling that I'm overall comfortable with it. Like I just, what do you think? A Colorado, and again, guys, let's start with the premise that the Colorado anti-discrimination laws are unnecessarily punitive and not actually. They create fear in people. It certainly was the issue with the Colorado Baker, where the Supreme Court, in a 7-2 non-conservative ruled Supreme Court, favored the Colorado Baker that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission acted maliciously, punitively, and like hostilely towards the plaintiff in that case. So it's like that's the law that people are afraid of. That's what's going on in Colorado. And so now we had a website designer say, look, I don't want to do a gay wedding website, which if I was a website designer, I don't know, I would do it. That's right. That. But.
Well, so this one was a bit funny, actually, because it's a test case. Like the actual person trying to do the website may not have existed.
I saw that. I did kind of do some research on that. I have an interesting point to make about that. It is occasionally, and it is rare though, where you can bring an action to the Supreme Court to preempt punishment for a law that you feel is going to harm you.
Exactly. So I was gonna say, I felt like it because someone was thinking it. They're getting ready to type the comment. They'd be like, "Hey, did you know that?" I want to bring up this case because that's exactly how this ended up getting framed. Is like, well, yes, it wasn't exactly a real request, but the reason why they ignored what might otherwise be a standing issue is because there was the threat of this type of thing happening, and they wanted to allow a test case to go up to the Supreme Court to like validate or invalidate like this way of either, depending on which side you're on, either protecting a protected communities or invalidating a law that
right
compels expression, because this is what this kind of came down to, right?
If I could jump in, the toxic poison of mainstream media has now made this ruling about the non-existent complainant in this case, but it was not. That part's not real. When CNN is talking about that, Lori brought her action based on a principle of law. She's the owner of a graphic web design studio, 303. It was not a response to a government action. Rather, it was a pre-enforcement challenge intended to prevent the use of the law against her. That is a legit. It's weird
Right.
because we don't hear enough about that, and the Supreme Court doesn't always take cases like that.
No.
But this one
Yeah,
they
because
did.
like any court could have just said, yeah, that's not a real thing. Like, we're just not gonna bother with this, right? Because again,
Right.
the 303 Creative, like the web design company, is the one who did this, and but they're just part of the person who agreed to be part of like this test case to combat this law, right? Again, this is a law out in Colorado, basically, and I know people are making comments about bakes a cake.
Makes the
Yes.
cake.
It should you be compelled to provide services to everyone? Are there situations where you are not compelled to provide a particular type of service? And the way we'll talk about first, like how the leftists talked about this case, which essentially they're like, this is a total rollback of the Civil Rights Act. You can discriminate however you want now, and there are weird religious exemptions for being able to like discriminate like however you want to against whoever you want to. But that's not what this case says. It's not what it does, because there's a distinction to be made between providing a neutral service and providing a service that compels expression, right? And it's an
Right.
important thing to like, if you're just selling hammers, right? You're just selling hammers to whoever you want to sell hammers to. Like, if you say, no, I'm not going to sell a hammer to you because you're gay, that is illegal under like discrimination, because you're not making a statement about your customer's beliefs by selling them like any given hammer.
Correct. You
That's
can sell a hammer to a serial killer and not get in trouble for it, just so you
yes, that's right.
know.
Won't get into like the murder rates on hammers versus guns either, but
Yeah, don't do that.
but what is a bit different is if someone says like, oh, you have to create this thing that requires a certain type of artistic expression, you are not compelled to provide that based on whatever reasons you choose, essentially, right? Like, so in
Correct.
this case, it was a wedding website. The person's like, I might theoretically not want to make a website for a gay couple. I shouldn't be compelled to make a website for a cause I don't believe in, right? Which is actually important, because in this case, like, people are hung up on it was a gay wedding website. So that's kind of what the law makes it out to be. But if you could imagine like any other number of cases, like where you might not want to make a website for someone, even if they are claiming to be part of a protective group. If I forget what the group is called, but if one of the like the black nationalist groups who like are really anti-Semitic wanted you to make a website for them, I don't know why they'd be going to like me for that or anyone else, and you're like, no, I'm not going to make a website that says nasty stuff. I'm not going to host things for you that say that. In the same way that Amazon says like, we don't want to host racist websites. You should be able to do that. You should not be compelled to offer your services to someone that you fundamentally disagree with. You can just say no, even if they're part of a protected group. Right. And that's a bit different than say, I will not make a website for someone because they're gay. It's a bit different than saying, I will not make this website that advocates for belief I don't believe. Again, I don't particularly like that. I'm very supportive of gay marriage and gay rights, but I don't think that you should be compelled to make something that you disagree with, that the government shouldn't threaten you with coercion if you don't want to make something for someone that doesn't jive with your beliefs. So it's not really a religious thing. So you could be a dyed-in-the-wool lefty who doesn't want to make a libertarian website either. And if the libertarian said, yeah, I'm being discriminated against because of my religion or whatever, like, it'd be nonsense. It's because of it. You're trying to compel them to make a thing that you don't like, and they shouldn't have to do that. Freedom of association. That's all it's about.
Yeah, it is. And Neil Gorsuch wrote the majority opinion, and he had a pretty good comment in there. Though I would like to point out that the article I'm parsing this off of is an NPR article. And guys, like, look, Neil Gorsuch is a lot of things, but he is not a conservative, dyed-in-the-wool conservative. He is a constitutionalist.
I just gotta add that editorializing in there. It kills me.
Yeah, the NPR article. That's why I just pointed my nasty finger at NPR saying you're editorializing. So they call him the conservative majority. Neil Gorsuch is a constitutionalist and a constructionalist. And I think that honestly, if we had 3 or 4 more like him a lot more things would make sense when it comes out of the Supreme Court, and everybody would understand it. But anyways, he says, if there's any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, he said, it is that the government may not interfere with an uninhibited marketplace of ideas. When a state law collides with the Constitution, he added, the Constitution must prevail. The decision was limited because of much of what might have been contested about the facts of the case were stipulated, namely that Smith intends to work with couples to produce a customized story for their websites using her words and her original artwork. Given those facts, Gorsuch said, Smith qualifies for constitutional protection. He did acknowledge, and this is where we're American, right? But this is where the First Amendment plays in. He acknowledges that the decision may result in misguided and even hurtful messaging from people that take this to the wrong place. But the nation's answer is tolerance, not coercion. The First Amendment envisions the United States as a rich and complex place where all persons are free to think and speak as they wish, not as the government demands. That is not a conservative opinion. That's a constitutional constructionalist opinion.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, yeah. I know NPR editorializing kills me, but yeah, no, Neil Gorsuch's opinion on this is great. You know, it's he has a pretty good record. I like the stuff that he has to say a lot.
So I particularly love it when he sides with like Ketanji Brown. Like I enjoy those moments that when they come around. I do. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, but yeah, that's kind of the whole thing in a nutshell. Like this has been a bit misrepresented by a lot of folks on the left.
A bit,
perhaps, yeah, just a little bit, as like the death of the Civil Rights Act and whatnot. But that's not it's not really what it is. And I said, voluntary association is important, whether or not you can be compelled to provide services that are artistic in nature is important. And
if you sell hammers, you got to sell hammers to everybody. I think we can all agree on that basic premise. But if what you're selling is a customized artistic service or a customized service, you've got the right to kind of
And so and like there's going to be more lawsuits with it. It's going to be a thing. Like, you know, does a website builder like Wix or something, could they discriminate based on like a protected class, right? Like Wix is like, they're just a website builder, right? Like, so there's nothing on their part. They're the website equivalent of selling hammers. So they probably couldn't do it, or some other similar company. But if it is like me as someone who builds websites, and it's something I like, I think about this because it's something I do occasionally. I occasionally build websites for folks. Like if because I'll say no to folks sometimes. Like I've had to say no to political candidates who are like, "Hey, build a website for me now. Look at their beliefs." I'm like, "No, I'm not. Not even if you paid me a bunch of money. I'm not interested in what you're selling, and I don't want to be involved with that. Right? Like it's not even worth the money to me. I've turned down clients for that. But yeah, that should be my right to do that too. And I don't think anyone's contesting it in the political sphere, but you should be able to do that. And no one should compel you to like be able to write something for them, to write something in a way that your name is going to be associated with it, where it is conceivably viewed as your opinion. Tattoo artists, I think they're the same way. Like if you don't want to do certain types of tattoos, you should have the right to do that.
Yeah, I was going to go to that. Like, if I'm a tattoo artist and somebody wants a Nazi tattoo, should I be obliged to give them a swastika like on their throat because that's what those kids do? Like, no, right? I wouldn't do it.
And they're not a protected class, so like you can say no to them. But you know, there might be other situations where you might have a disagreement with someone, and you should be able to say like, no, that's I don't have any obligation to put my art on you. You know,
right?
That's there should be more of this. So like that isn't what this case says even, but like I would be okay with taking that further and then finding ways to like, you know, call out people who are actually discriminatory and awful. Like I wouldn't want to do business with this web company who's like, we don't want to do gay weddings. Okay, like well, maybe I'll go somewhere else then, right? Like and that should be your right to do that too.
Yeah, no, most likely I would go someplace else because they're putting it out there and I'll put it out there, then I'll go to someone else. Like that's it. That's the free marketplace. That's how ideas win. That's how we make ourselves better. That's how we get along better. Like we're at this problem where every issue that comes up is just this cause for, and mostly it's probably on social media, but this nasty back and forth between people where clearly people who don't understand the issues are arguing with other people that don't understand the issues and coming to no conclusions. It's just like a manipulation tactic.
Everyone's got their prepackaged talking points.
Yes, they do.
And they're just pasting those into real quick because we have like a minute left. Okay. The Erica Marsh thing.
Oh my God!
What a Twitter account. I think she was fake. She got shut down. I think she's a bot.
She's banned, man. She got banned on Twitter. The Erica Marsh thing, guys. We're running out of time, but I'll see if I can get it really quick. She posted this insane, like, now without affirmative action, Black people will never succeed in a merit-based society. And like,
I think she's a troll.
She's not a, like, she's a long con. If that
I think that's what it was. I think she was a long con. I think she was. They were just like scraping like, partisan Democratic tweets and like reposting those until like this moment popped up.
Man, oh man!
I don't know. I think she's a bot.
She had 137,000 followers before she went off the rails. And I went back through her tweets and I'm like, is there evidence that she is just a Dennis troll, a Dennis style troll or something like that? Dennis is epic. He does great stuff. You guys should check him out on Twitter. But no, man, there was no evidence until this tweet of Blacks can't survive in a merit-based society.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, but we're out of time to speculate about random, weird, possibly fake, not fake, I don't know, Twitter drama. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. The WYSL show is out for the evening, but we're going to keep going on the live podcast. So if you aren't listening on our live broadcasts, make sure you follow us, Free Solution Facebook page, YouTube channel, Kevin Wilson pages, Tim O'Connor pages, or the podcast. All right, have a wonderful night, folks. Take care, WYSL audience.
All right. We didn't even get to the cocaine in the White House. We didn't get to some of these.
So that's what the bonus show's for.
Yeah, awesome comments. Dude, the bonus show, though, has got to talk about that lady that removed herself from an airplane and was screaming that, I don't know what that is, but that is not a human being. I'm getting the hell off of here. And if you guys want to dive, I mean, dude, it was epic. I had the article up about it. I still have it up. She just lost her mind. And look, I sympathize, man, because we know there's lizards, wearing human suits, and sometimes you get a little flash of it. But this lady must have saw something that not too many people have ever seen. And so basically it delayed the flight for 3 hours. Guys, if you catch the video, I'll post a link to the New York Post article. You got to check her out. It could be like another long con or a really well played kind of, but it's going viral.
Yeah, I saw it. I know, like, yeah, well, one of those ones, like, man, maybe it could be a practical joke, but also doing that on a flight is it's asking for trouble, right?
Yeah.
If the feds decide they don't like what you did on a flight, they can really throw the book at you.
Yeah, she probably won't be able to fly again because she's a menace. But it was, I don't know, man. Like, she in a way was weirdly believable. So I don't know what she saw that made her freak out. And I know a lot of you kids are experimenting with psychedelics and stuff like that. So maybe it's that. I don't know, but holy cow, it was hilarious. Like a whole pound of cocaine they found in the White House, Kevin. I guess Hunter stayed overnight on Saturday, and they found a pound of cocaine. No, those are not the facts, guys. I'm making it.
I'd say, I'm like, are we doing fake news now?
Yeah, are we just making stuff up? But yeah, no, guys, they did find a little bit of cocaine in the White House. It did cause the entire White House to be evacuated. They found it near, like, you can't carry your cell phone through the White House, which I guess in a way, makes sense. So you got to drop your cell phone off and pick it up on your way back out. So probably wisely, somebody had a illegal substance in their pocket and they left it near the cell phones. Or perhaps it's a practical joke. Like, somebody being a wise ass, wasting money.
with a whole pound of cocaine.
Yeah.
Feels like a lot to play a joke on too. But
Yeah,
I don't know. I didn't
really.
go to Harvard. I'm not a rich elite. It's can't just like throw around pounds of cocaine and as a gag.
Yes. Was Hunter there? Yeah. No. He was at the state dinner, and maybe they swung by the White House. Look, Kevin. I don't know if you noticed, but like, there's this thing. There was this day where all the reporters acted in solidarity to try to get answers from the Biden administration about certain WhatsApp texts about a Hunter shakedown.
Oh yeah. And I think we never ended up talking about that, but yeah, no, it is interesting to see. Maybe there's something there. I don't know.
Well, so look, he's talking, and I didn't pull up all of the details, but I just what I want everybody to know is that all, like, no matter where they were from, ABC News, CBS News, Fox News, they all acted in collaboration. Doing pulling the trick of referring to my colleague's earlier question that you already refused to answer. Could you please give us a few more details? Or what can you actually tell us, since you're trying not to tell us anything? It was really cool. Like, and she had to keep stonewalling and trying to refer him to the Justice Department, who was supposedly investigating this. And the Justice Department guy said exactly this. He's like, "Hey, I'll see you guys later. Have a great 4th of July weekend. I'm not talking about that." And he walked out the door. So those were the comments he was asking them to, refer
amazing to. Communications professionalism. Just like, see you later.
Yep. See ya.
I mean, part of being a communications professional is knowing when to not answer a question, right?
And a video came out of Hunter snorting coke and driving 172 miles an hour on his way to Las Vegas as well.
Sounds like a guy who loves freedom.
Honestly, if Hunter had fought that gun conviction on a 2A principle, we would be living in the best.
If all he was doing was like having guns, smoking crack, and driving fast, like, that would be fine. It's the like possible like corruption involved with like states run like corporations that like and I'm still at the point where I don't know that Joe Biden was actually involved. What I imagine is happening is that he's just throwing his dad's name around for clout.
So I completely believe she encountered something evil on the plane. I get that. Also, there is, like, look, him saying his dad is sitting right next to him and him calling his dad the big guy when he's obviously shaking down a foreign official for cash isn't the same thing as his dad actually being there. I don't like the systems of corruption that we have. I do not like selling access to the U.S. budgetary process. But every single one of these clowns and jokers has their favorite lobbyist that gets them money for advancing legislation, especially the more popular ones. So there's nothing new about corruption. And unfortunately, we've codified a lot of corruption into law in the United States. And that's one of the real problems that we're running across. People are buying opinions and regulations and access to, the budgetary process. And it's gross. It's really gross.
Yeah.
There is Shelly keeps bringing up, she brought it up a couple times. As a bartender or as a counter service person, you have certain rights to refuse people's service if they're misbehaving, if they're even if they're just making you uncomfortable, you can do it.
Yeah. But you can't do it just like, I don't want to serve this guy because he's Indian. Like, you can't do that.
Right, you can't do that.
A, the business is going to be mad and they're just going to fire you anyway. B, you can't do that like legally either. But like as a bartender, like you can say, hey, this person has a bad vibe. They seem already intoxicated, or like they're harassing customers. Like, you have some flexibility. It's just, it can't be based on a protected characteristic.
Ponzi schemes, protecting Ponzi schemes. I think that came up during our college discussion, but I think that it's endemic to our governing structure now that we've destroyed real wealth building for the lower middle class. And we have all sorts of Ponzi schemes like Social Security, like the college system on some level. The colleges do, some segments of colleges are still offering value. It's just that they've increased their offering so much that they've diluted the value of it.
Yeah,
And
there's a lot more nonsense out there, and and it also depends on what you do with the degree. Like my wife has a women and gender studies degree. Like that's like she has one of those degrees. Everyone's like, you'll do nothing with it. Like she makes more money than me. She does well. Like she like is a good writer, and she recognized her good writing skills and turned that into like a series of good jobs.
That's good though.
Yeah, but if you do that and you're like, I'm just gonna like read books and like yell at people in coffee shops, like, okay, yeah, you're not going to make money doing that, right? It's what skills can you apply, and do you have like the networks and the wherewithal to be able to apply those skills effectively? That's what really matters. Like you can get whatever degree you want in liberal arts, you be a critical thinker, you can do well if you know how to apply it.
Yeah, no, my goal was with my kids, Kevin, and this is a suggestion for you, and was to get my kids to at least say something that they wanted to do before they went into college. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so your wife is a writer and she saw value in taking gender studies to enhance her ability to communicate. I'm actually pretty cool with that. Like, yeah. I think that's, and certainly I'm not necessarily knocking gender studies, right? Like there's certain parts of, we could have a lot of communication about what society has structured as roles for men and women and whether those are valid or not. And I could see, like, for example, someone shared a 1950s man on the street interview about whether men should be able to spank their wives, like it's right. like that's was real back in the 50s. And certainly that's not something we're aspiring to today. And all three of the guys that they talked to, all three of them said, well, absolutely. If they're behaving like children, we should be able to spank them. It's like,
big yikes.
Oh boy. Well, it was a different time. And certainly the study of how relationships between men and women could be a great college class and offer value to society if people were able to write about it, lecture about it, and really kind of have unbiased political discussions about it.
Yeah, sure. Torrance has asked this question twice. It's a tough question. Torrance on YouTube says, should there be protected classes besides minors?
I'll go back to I'm a one race, human race kind of thing. But I do recognize that society has created situations that it needs to correct. Now, I want to say no to this, but not without qualification and not without recognizing that other people will disagree with me vehemently about this. But that the protection itself that we end up coming up with is limiting and is structurally not beneficial to the classes that are protected. Let's put it that way. Right. So no, you're right. Should there be any protected classes? No, not really. No, our society would work better and we'd be nicer to each other. The government and its actions encourages hostility towards each other because that enables them to empower themselves and rule over us instead of serve us. Right. That's too simplistic. It would be a long form discussion, but that's good enough for one sentence, for kind of an answer to that question.
No, I get you, and I more or less agree. And that part of the reason for the way a lot of businesses set up discriminatory practices, particularly in the South, although the practices did exist in more subtle ways in the North, was it was government. Government was afraid that Black people and white people would be hanging out and being in the same spaces, and the type of people who had power and maybe were kicked out of power in the post-Civil War South did not like that. They're willing to use violence and terrorism to kill the people who are trying to make changes and allow people to just participate in commerce and interact with one another and do businesses and form community. And they used violence and the power of government. Eventually, they just carried that violence into government to enforce their racist worldview on the South until the federal government intervened in many ways, and grassroots movements intervened and started to see some actual substantial successes in the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And then the government stepped in and stopped those, right?
Yeah, exactly. Whoa. You're advocating for your rights a little too hard. We're going to... Jared Hoover, get over here. But no, that's, you know, so yeah, we don't want to take that question seriously because yeah, it's ideally no. I get why they exist, but ideally, like as I think we both agree, is race as a concept is both false and toxic, and dismantling the ways in which we reinforce it through both measurement and protection might be the better solution, given how far, like, culturally we've come in the last 60 years. And I know there's a bunch of folks on the left who are like pulling their hair out if they listen to that, but
sure, I get it, and I even understand, right? Like that me, kind of an old fat white guy, who's also bald, saying things like, "Hey, we're one race, we're the human race." That identity politics has done a lot of damage.
Doing the all lives matter thing, Tim.
What's that?
You're just doing the all lives matter thing, Tim.
Yeah, all lives matter. Old lives matter, guys. Like my kid's got me a cup that says that, so it's true. If your kid gets you a cup and it says it, it's absolutely true. But will I understand that people have a counterpoint, that they want to express feelings about what I'm saying, that they see structural racism and structures that don't benefit them, and they're blaming. It's weird because how do they not blame the government for those things? How do they not say, hey, the government's been doing this to us for decades and we've gotten nowhere? How do they say that's Tim's fault? You know what I mean? How do they say that's Kevin's fault? That's the part where there's this very effective disconnect that the political class weaves over people's minds,
Yeah. And it depends on like what whoever you're talking to. Some people might leave it as like, yeah, it's your fault for existing based on immutable characteristics that you can't control either. And
yeah.
But other people will be like, well, you in your position can talk about these issues, talk about like what's actually happening, talk about ways to dismantle like discriminatory practices that still exist, and then that's good and that's fine, right? And that's so again, I try to like understand like where the left is coming from, even when I don't always agree how they frame and talk about and advocate solutions to some of these things. Right. I want to understand where they're coming from on this.
Well, that's one of the good things about you and me, and a lot of libertarians are very, very willing to have what we would call conversations, not arguments, right? But the world, 60% of the world seems to be hardwired into just having freaking arguments and thinking that those arguments hold value, when those arguments are the result of manipulations by the political class or the media class or whatever. And so I don't know. I do my best to make fun of all of it, really, and point out where the government is the culprit.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. All right, it's at 10:30. I think
I'm tired, Kevin. I'm tired.
Yeah,
I'm an old man and I'm tired. I got to get some sleep.
Same. I got another day of battling with my toddler coming up.
You'll get there, man. Hang in there. The rewards are worth it. They're a blast. He'll be like peeing in the toilet before you know it.
Yeah, sure.
The house is still gonna smell like pee for a month or two till you find all the spots he whizzed in.
Yeah, exactly. All the spots I didn't notice.
Oh yeah, no, he's doing it all the time. You're not catching. When you catch him, it's because he wants you to catch him. He's putting on a show. But the times he really has to go, he's just letting it rip.
Yeah, and then screaming and running around my house. Oh yeah, no, I've seen that. First day. Oh, it's everywhere. No, stop moving. It's a fun game to him.
Yeah, no, I miss those times because they're so innocent and so much fun, but you get there. They get there. And they grow so fast, it'll be gone in the blink of an eye, brother. So enjoy it.
All right. Well, have a good night, folks. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for all the comments. You guys rock. Take care.